Hi! Thank you very much for turning back in. My name is Fonny. In my channel, I talk about my houseplant and my Hoyas. Today, it is a video to respond to one of the questions that one of you have asked in the comment box below. It is about a recommendation over Hoya that are good in trailing. In other words, Hoyas that looks nice in being a basket hanging plant. I had thought about how to put it in a more structured way for you after watching this video to make your own determination on whether the plant that you have, whether it is a cutting or it is a small plant, that you not necessarily know whether it will potentially look good as a hanging basket plant. I also want you to tell me what is your favorite Hoya that looks really nice as a hanging basket plant in the comment box down below. So if you like this type of content and you would like to support me in answering questions that you have in the comment box below, don't forget to like this video and share this video with your friends. If you have not subscribed to this channel yet and you want to make sure you don't miss out next time when I push out new content, don't forget to hit that subscribe button so you won't miss out next time. So in today's video, instead of just telling you what are the top 10 Hoyas that I would like them to be a hanging basket plant, rather I would like to share 4 consideration points that you could determine whether your small cutting or your Hoya that is relatively small, that you don't know whether it will look nice aesthetically as a hanging basket plant. I will also show you example of different categories of Hoya that falls under these 4 conditions. So it will give you an idea of how potentially they will look like if they fall under different conditions. The 4 consideration that you could have is leaf size, stem thickness, stem softness, and also the growing pattern. Start off with the first point, size of the leaf. It is more easy, in my opinion, to have a hanging basket plant have small to medium leaf size. The reason is because when it is in a hanging basket, you want it to grow more bushy. You also don't want to have a very large pot to hang up really large sized Hoya leaf. Of course, that depends on your preference. If you have huge space to begin with, it will be very nice, in my opinion, to just let your Hoya grow wherever they want. i.e. do not use a trellis to kind of trail it upwards, but just let it grow. However, many of us may not have this size to begin with. So I would say for small leaf Hoya, it will look more pleasant in a smaller container. Because for larger leaf Hoyas, potentially they have a larger stem and also larger root system compared to the small leaf size Hoya. The second point is the stem thickness. Now, what do I mean by stem thickness? If you take the diameter of the stem, I would say 2 millimeter would be thin stem Hoya. And if it's more than around 3 or maybe 4 to 5 centimeter, that will be a medium thickness or medium to large thickness. If it is like 5 millimeter, that is a thick stem. So with regard to stem thickness, the thinner the stem is, it tends to be a little bit more flexible. So it is easier to bend, which makes it more easy to grow downward as a hanging basket plant. But at the same time, you also need to think about the third point, which is the stem softness. What does it mean by stem softness? That means whether the stem could be bendable. Sometime, and I will also show you in the examples that I'm going to share with you later on in this video, sometime thinner stem does not necessarily means they're softer. For example, Hoya Iris Marie or Hoya Odetteae, even though they have very thin stem, they are really stiff, which means you cannot really bend it. The time when you bend it, they actually crack and break. And this really impacts the growth pattern. Now, growth pattern is the 4th point. Growth pattern means how does the Hoya grow when they push out new leaf? Generally, what I observed in my 200 plus Hoya is that with thinner stem, but more stiff texture, it tends to grow more upwards towards the light source. Later on, you will see the example that I'm going to show you of Hoya Iris Marie. Even though the stem is as thin as the thin stem Hoya that looks really nice as a hanging basket, which is Leytensis, even the stem thickness is similar. The softness is very different. Hoya Iris Marie has a more stiff texture, which allows it to grow more upwards because the stem itself could actually support the leaf to grow more upwards without actually falling down due to gravity. But of course, if you have like this size of the length of the stem, the likelihood of it hanging downwards or tipped downwards as a hanging basket plant will be higher. So in conclusion, the stem thickness and stem softness will impact the growth pattern. Another thing that relevant to growth pattern would be how bushy it will grow. And how do you determine whether it is a bushy growth style is how easy it branches out. In other words, one node could actually push out 4 to 6 leaf, and that's because it is easier to branch out. If your Hoya has that tendency to branch out more, that also makes the basket to look more full, even if you only got 1 or 2 stem. You will have a look at the Leytensis example and other example that I'm going to show you how a branched out Hoya will make it probably look nicer as a basket plant, given the fact that the thickness and softness of the stem is relatively soft and thin. So to conclude, how do you determine whether a Hoya has potential to be an aesthetically pleasing hanging basket plant? It determines on the leaf size, stem thickness, stem softness, and also the growth pattern. Before I jumped into showing you examples of different combination of my actual Hoyas, how it looks like, I would also like to share my experience with you. What happened to the growth pattern if you let it grow downwards? Now, for a larger leaf Hoya, most of the time, if it doesn't have support to grow upwards and you just let it grow down, the leaf size of the plant in the far end tip of the stem likely to be smaller than the leaf that is closer to the soil substrate. I think this is because when a stem has more support, it tends to grow larger leaf because it doesn't have to worry too much about the size of the leaf that will crack the stem. But as sooner that the stem grows longer, the support of the stem is lower because the only point of access to soil substrate and support, which is the pot itself, is very far away. That makes these leaf on the far end tip to grow smaller. So then the plant knows that it won't necessarily crack the stem because without support. Well, that is just my hypothesis. So if you have another viewpoint or if you agree with what I just explained, please leave your comment down below so then we can try to understand the growth pattern of our Hoya a little bit more. And with regard to smaller and medium leaf size, it doesn't really impact so much when it comes to the size of the leaf because in my opinion, size of the leaf impacts more with the light intensity. Most of the time, higher light intensity tends to have smaller leaf and also thicker texture on the leaf. The second thing that will impact the growth pattern, I would say, if you grow it hang downwards, is that the likelihood of it branch out will be higher, which is similar to the time when you trail your plant with a trellis. The reason is because when you trellis the plant, whenever the plant kind of bended, likely, in my experience, that the connection point of the bended arc will push out another vine. It will grow more bushy if you have a trellis for your Hoya, so then it can actually receive more support. But the reason why it branches out, I believe it is because the bending of the stem stimulate the growth point of the plant itself. They have a sense of signal that being it bent might hinder its growth. That's why it'd rather just push out a new growth point on the node that is right next to the bending point. Again, let me know if you agree with my hypothesis. I would love to know what are your experience. For this category, actually all of the Hoyas that I have next to my window sill is having that characteristic. You can see that. I can take this one first. I have shown you in my growth update for winter. You can check that video out. But just to give you the idea of this category, you can see the first example up there is the Krohniana. And this one, it is having small leaf, and also you can see that the leaf itself, it's not extremely thin or thick. It's just a general small leaf Krohniana leaf shape. But then you can see that the stem over here is relatively thin. I would say it's around 3 millimeter thick. For the softness, it is not extremely soft, but it wouldn't really it's possible to bend. So I think in that perspective, it is on the softer side. As you can see that it's quite flexible. When it comes to the growth pattern, you can see that it is relatively growing downwards, and of course this is a large plant. For the new growth point, it will grow more towards the sun direction. For example, this one, it is not super this one is not Krohniana, sorry, this one is Rebecca. But you can see that up there, most of them hang downwards. So the growth pattern is quite flexible. It is basically growing towards the gravity. And same as this one. This one over here is Rebecca. Rebecca has also a very, very small leaf shape, size, very small leaf size. You can see over here, this is also around maybe 2 centimeter. And the stem itself is even thinner than Krohniana. If you can see these comparison, it's very, very small difference. Let me see, am I grabbing the right one? Yes, that's right. This one is Krohniana because it's more heart-shaped leaf, and the Rebecca is a little bit more elongated. But if you see this side by side, Krohniana is definitely thicker than the Rebecca. That's the reason why Rebecca actually hang down more aesthetically easily, I would say. You can see that it looks very natural just hanging down. So this proves that the stem thickness and of course the stem texture really matters when it comes to how it looks like. Does it look nice, or does it look a little bit awkward growing as a basket plant? And then another plant over here. This one is Krohniana silva, and you can see that it's very similar shape as Krohniana that I just showed you. And with regard to the thickness of the stem, it is similar to Krohniana that I just shown you, and it is more on a slightly thicker size compared to the stem you see over here. There is a small mealybug situation, I believe. No, it is not mealybug, it's just sab, which is great. So you see that this is very different when it comes to the thickness, and that's the reason why comparatively Rebecca, it's just very nice flow over here, I would say. And then for Krohniana, it still look pretty nice because it is a very large plant, and then it just trailed down naturally because it has super long stem like that. Because of gravity, it has to grow downwards. But for the newer one, as you can see, these one, it is not as nice looking because it's like everything is like sticking out. But on the other hand, for Rebecca, because it's very thin, it just grows downwards nicely. And over here you see Rosita. It is also having maybe slightly larger leaf size. You can see over here. It probably is around 5 centimeter. Yeah, around 5 centimeter long. And also you look into the stem. This one, the thinness, it's quite thin. I would say it's thinner than Krohniana. If you have a kind of quick comparison over here, it's very, very similar, but this one I can tell you in real life, it is thinner. However, this one is more stiff. You can see that the texture on the stem is not wooden, but it has this kind of resistant sandpaper texture. And because of that, it grows a little bit more on the growth pattern to kind of stick up. It grows more like upwards towards the sun. And you can see that one over there. It's an example. And of course, when the stem becomes really, really long, it will naturally follow the gravity and then it will grow down. You can see this one is also from Rosita. It just goes all the way down. And then down here, this one is Burtoniae, SP finis Burtoniae. You can see that this is having smaller leaf size compared to Rosita up here. However, for this one, the leaf size is slightly smaller than Rosita, and the stem itself is quite similar to Rosita. It is similar stem thickness, and also the texture is a bit more like sandpaper, and because of this it is quite stiff, and that's why you see it has the tendency to grow upwards towards the light source. Let me just change my angle. You can see that these stems are sticking up. It's very growing towards the light source, and provided that there are so many leaves on this stem, it goes naturally downwards, but it kind of have a little bit more of resistance compared to Hoya with softer and thinner stem. And over here we have the Hoya Mathilde. Hoya Mathilde, on the contrast, actually have small leaf size. You can see over here. It has relatively small leaf size compared to other ones that I showed you. Maybe the same kind of size as Rebecca, but more round. The difference is it has slightly wooden stem. When the stem matures or get old, it has slightly more wooden texture, and because of that, together with the fact that the stem is quite thick and also it is quite stiff, the growth pattern is a bit awkward. You see that for shorter stem it goes like that horizontal direction, and this one goes downwards because it kind of have some leaves follows the gravity, but you can also see that for this one, this is the stem of Mathilde. It kind of didn't go super smooth downwards, but it is trying because of the fact that it is such a long stem. You see that it tends to go towards the light source, or maybe I would say it grows upwards a little bit more, and that's why it could both be a trelling plant and also a trellis plant, that you can put it on kind of like a trellis, and then you can make it grow towards the upper direction. And as far as I know, this one actually grows all the way up here, so it is very different. Just saw a peduncle growing in the Mathilde. Super exciting. Right, let's move on to this side. This is a perfect example to show you a very, very ideal characteristic of a hanging basket Hoya. This one over here is Hoya Leytensis. First category, the leaf size. Leaf size is relatively small, I would say around 2 to 3 centimeters, and the stem thinness is very, very thin. It is also thinner than it is almost thinner than Hoya Rebecca, and also it is very soft. You can see that I can bend it, not so much that I break it, but it's quite bendable. It's very soft. And the next item is The growth pattern. The growth pattern of Leytensis is super ideal because it bushes out very easily. You can see that just within this stem, it started with one stem, but then each node, it kind of have a clutter of leaf. If I show you this example, because there are some new leaf coming out, you see that it has two leaves that grows in the same node. That makes it to be easy to be a full basket plant like this. And you can see that in comparison with others. Obviously, all of them are very bushy because it's quite mature Hoya that I have. But you can see this is an example of a very cluttered stem. I believe there's maybe 2 to 3 stems only, and then it just have a very large bulk of leaves. So this is a good example for a hanging basket Hoya. And move on down here. This is other category of kind of hanging basket plant. I would probably prefer to have this one trellis on a trellis. The reason is because I don't have enough space, and this is the easiest way for me to let it grow the way it wanted to. This one over here is Hoya NS05-055, and you can see this one, it is a very thick leaf. You can see it's almost 2 millimeter thick, and leaf size, I would say it's more on a medium size. The entire leaf is quite round and the surface area is quite large compared to others that I showed you, and you can see that the stem is very thick. It's approximately 3 millimeter, and it is extremely stiff. It's impossible to bend it, so I'm not going to do that to avoid breaking it. But this one, as you can see, it could be a hanging plant like this. One of the reasons is because the growing pattern is very pretty. The internode is quite similar on each sets of leaf. So even though it's not growing in a very bushy way, it looks very neat and tidy as a hanging basket plant. It could also be quite tricky to trellis it, because the stem being very stiff, you need to start early, otherwise you probably will risk breaking the stem. And at the same time, if you change your mind in the middle of your project, then it could look a bit awkward if you kind of trail it down from a trellis condition. And this one over here on the side is quite similar kind of condition. This one here is IR26. I actually struggle a little bit keeping this to grow during the winter season. This one haven't grown at all throughout the month in winter. It's a slight mealybug. I'm just gonna do it like this and wash my hand. And you can see that the growth pattern is also similar to NS05-055. It could trellis down, but it is quite stiff on the stem, and also the thickness of the stem makes it little bit not awkward, but not as nice as the other ones, because it could potentially grow upwards a little bit before it ever trail down if there's ever some new leaf coming out. Move on to this side over here. This one is a good example of another category of hanging Hoya. This one over here is Hoya Vaccinoidies. This is kind of special because it could grow both downward as the growth pattern. It could also grow upwards depending on how heavy the top are. And take this one as an example. Let me show you some close-up. The leaf size is very, very small. It is smaller than Bella, but it has quite thick leaf texture. And with regard to the stem itself is quite thin. However, it's relatively stiff compared to the Rebecca or compared to Leytensis that I just showed you. And because of the stiffness of the stem, even though the texture is green and also it's kind of thin. It tends to grow upward first when it just pushed out new growth point. And you can see these are the example. These are new growth tips on the top, and the tendency is to grow upwards, not downwards. But I'm pretty sure at the time when these ones grow maybe double the length, it will be too heavy for it to grow upwards, and it will eventually give up and surrender and to hang down like this, which I really like, because you can see that this leaves combines with other texture of the hanging basket I have. It makes it very special, and it makes the kind of landscape look more interesting. So try this type of texture plant as your hanging basket plant. Will be interesting. We move on to this side over here. I would specifically want to show you this beautiful basket Hoya. This one over here is Hoya Heuschkeliana in a variegated. This one is a very famous and super nice hanging basket Hoya. First of all, this fits all of the category as a perfect hanging Hoya. The first area about the leaf size, it is very small, around 1 to 1.5 centimeters, and it is also very regular. All of the leaf size is very similar, which makes it very aesthetically pleasing, and it looks extra neat and tidy. And the second point is the thinness of the stem. It is very thin, not as thin as Leytensis, but thin enough to be easy to trail down. And third part is how stiff it is. It is very bendable. If you see this, it's very easy to flex around. And last point would be the growth pattern. The growth pattern is also super nice. You can see that from far. It is a very bushy basket plant, and the reason is because the growth pattern, it branches out quite easily, and also the internode is very short. That makes it very easy for it to bush up and looks like a full pot of leaf. And you can see that the internode, when it's closer to the soil substrate, which it has a little bit more support, it has shorter even internode. And I guess this is because it has more support to the leaf growth, and as it grows and trail down, because the support of the Hoya is not as much. That's why the internodal space has increased. You see over here. But I actually really prefer this because it makes it very pleasant to look at, and it's not like a cluttered of leaf when it grows downwards. So Hoya Heuschkeliana is one of the top trailing hanging Hoya that I would definitely recommend. Then we move on to this one over here. This one is a comparable example that I can show you, because this might not look super nice as a hanging basket plant, but I want to show you why it doesn't look nice, because of the four characteristics that we have discussed. First, it actually met the criteria of being a nice hanging basket plant with small leaf. The leaf size is probably 1.5 centimeters large, so leaf size wise is not a problem. However, it is the second and third criteria that kind of changes how nice it could look. It is the stem. Look at the stem over here. The stem is relatively thick, and also it is in the wooden texture, which makes it extra stiff. And because of this, you basically can't bend it. When you can't bend it, the growth pattern will be very freestyle, i.e. that would be more towards the light source. And that also makes it sticks out of the natural nice look. If you look from behind here, you see that the entire growth pattern is quite messy. All of the stem goes this direction, down direction, up, and then all over the place. And the reason is majorly because of the stem texture is wooden and very stiff and thick. Based on that, I yeah, I think it's okay to grow as a hanging basket plant. You can save a lot of space from doing that if you have upper space that is freed up, i.e. you don't have to worry too much about how much space in the air that the plant occupies. So that's okay in my opinion, but comparatively, you can see the left and right. It's a stark contrast from which one looks nicer. Then we'll move on to this one down here. This is Hoya Iris Marie. In terms of leaf size, it is medium size. It's around 5 to 7 centimeters large. The leaf size mostly depend on the strength of light. The higher the light, normally the leaf size become a bit smaller. And you can see that the stem is relatively thin. It's quite similar to what you could compare with on the side as this one over here, Heuschkeliana variegated. So the stem thickness is, I would say, is relatively similar. However, the stiffness of the stem itself, even though it is not wooden, it is very stiff. You can barely bend it. It's almost like a tree stick that you could imagine. That's how I'm feeling the texture at the moment. And because of that, this is the very determinant factor why this mostly grows upwards. At least it grows upwards when the stem is not too heavy. And that's what you can see at the moment. All of the stems are relatively small, so it doesn't have very heavy top. And that's the reason why all of the new growth point, it points upwards. And on the side, you can briefly see over here. Now this one kind of hang down a little tiny bit. This is because the leaf has slightly become more heavy. But all in all, this may not be an easy hangable plant because of the growth pattern, unless you have it very large, and all of them will likely to go first upwards, then sideways, then it will surrender and go downwards. Then we move here. This one is Hoya Lithophytica. It is a very good example to show you how important the softness of the stem is to make it look nice as a hanging basket plant. So first of all, you can see that the plant itself doesn't look that great from the top. And the reason is because I have a lot of cutting and I just chopped it up. And the stem, when it is in a highlight condition, it is extremely thick. If you can see over here, it is almost maybe 3 millimeter or even 4 millimeter thick. Let me try to focus here. And because of that, even the leaf size is extremely small. This could be the smallest compared to all of them that I have shown you up till now. But because of the stem, the growth pattern is kind of awkward. It will grow downward because of gravity, but it will go like this when it doesn't have too much leaf in the pot or in the stem. You can see that even though the leaf is very thin and very small, it just grows sideways. And what is great about not giving it too much light is when I change the condition, I have placed it in my room environment without that intensive blasting of light, the stem start growing much thinner. And because of this, it is also quite flexible. It is quite soft. You can see that I can bend it quite easily. And this is what I actually observed, the plant from Emily's home. She also have a Lithophytica, but the leaf size is slightly larger and the stem is very soft and thin. And I managed to achieve that now because I just put it outside of the meal spout cabinet. And you can see that with thinner and softer stem, it hang downs. Not super pretty compared to the one that I showed you, but at least it hang down like it has potential to be a pretty hanging basket plant. You can look into another example inside my meal spout cabinet. starting from here. This one here is Hoya Davidcumingii with yellow flower. The first characteristic, it is very small leaf, around 3 centimeters large, and the stem is pretty thin and quite soft. It is not so bendable, but it's not a problem to hang down. And the growth pattern is also really nice. It has relatively regular internode, which makes it very neat and tidy if you look in this more holistic view like that. And this one on the side, this is a new Hoya that I have purchased from LB Garden. I love this one. This one is Hoya Sulawesi. I don't think it is published yet, so I just have the name of where it is from, but I'm not going to go through too much of this texture, otherwise this will be a 2-hour long video. But as you can see, it is a relatively small and thin leaf Hoya, and the stem is very soft. You see that it is very bendable. I'm not trying to break it, but it's not breakable. Like, it is very flexible, and also it is very thin. And together with that pubescent, it just looks very, very cute and fussy. But this one, it also have a very nice internode space, which makes it very nice to look at and aesthetically pleasing. If you look at these two together, it is very neat in this perspective. And I also want to show you this one. This one is also unidentified. It is not published yet, but I can show you the name on the screen. This one is super small leaf Hoya, maybe slightly less than 1 centimeters large. And what is very special about this one is it has quite thick leaf, you can see. And with the small leaf shape, and also the stem is very thin and also very bendable, it's very soft. It grows very nice as a hanging basket plant. And it also branches out crazy amount. You can't really see it because I have it crammed in this Hoya wall. But if you just focus on this one over here, you can see that the internodal space is really nice. It is quite tidy, growing as a basket plant. And then next to it over here, this one is Hoya Tengchongensis. This one is, oh, so pretty. Look at that. Look at the vein and the tiniest leaf. I have this covered in my 10 small round leaf Hoya collection. Check that out if you want to see more footage. Now let's just focus on whether this one is a good idea as a hanging basket plant. First, it is small leaf size, and second, the stem is very thin and it's super soft. At first, it would like to grow upwards as the light source is above, but because of the soft and thin stem characteristic, it wouldn't be a problem to grow downward as a hanging basket plant. These ones I have shown you in the recent video, so I will try to make it quick. Just share with you on the characteristic. This one is Hoya Curtisii subspecies collariata. This one is very small leaf sized. However, even the stem is very thin. It is quite stiff because you can see that the mature stem is wooden texture, which means it's not easy to bend. So most of the leaf actually try to go upwards, and I would not think it is a problem when you have a huge basket. But if it's a new kind of new plant that you just received, it will likely grow upwards first, and then in comparison to the side, this one on the side, this one is Hoya Peltata. In contrast, this one goes really, really nicely as a hanging basket plant. It is because first, it has really small leaf, it looks super cute, and also the stem is relatively soft. It is the same thickness as Hoya collariata, but this one is very soft. So it grows very nicely, and it just naturally goes downwards as the growth pattern. And over there I have perhaps I can show you this one. This one is Hoya Polypus. This, I would define it as a large leaf Hoya. Well, yeah, in my definition, because I love tiny small leaf Hoya. So this one is large for me. And does this look nice as a hanging basket plant? I think you can tell me in the comment box down below, but I can just tell you about the characteristic. This is a large leaf, and I believe, let's see, yes, the stem is relatively thin. It's not like 5mm thickness, but it is also quite stiff. You can't really bend it too much, and I have it as a hanging basket plant. Or I have it hanging, it's not a basket yet, but the reason why I do that is because it saves space. I can't really have this upwards trellis because it will be burning the leaf just with that small space gap between the light source. So I chose to grow it like a hanging plant. And let's see how this impacted the growth of the leaf size. In this example, because this is the third sets of leaf that grows as a hanging basket leaf, it's still very large. The original leaf is like this size, probably around 7 to 9 centimeter if you include the tip as well, and this one is the same size, or if not larger. So this sets of leaf are not impacted. The leaf here, I believe it's slightly smaller because it was part of the acclimation new growth point. So this one didn't really impact. These are new sets of leaves, so it will definitely grow larger. So I will let you know if it eventually grows smaller leaf size, but yeah, even this type of leaf size would size up this way. All right, another medium leaf size Hoya I can show you as a trailing plant. This one here is Hoya Crassipetiolata Splash. It is extremely pretty plant. I can tell you where it is. It's over there. So essentially it just grows all the way around without any support, and then it grows down here, and down there, and down there. I believe that's where it ends. But let's have a close-up look at this one. So the leaf size, I think it is around maybe 5 to, yeah, around 5 centimeters large, and it is relatively thin. And the stem, it's a thin stem Hoya, and the stiffness, it's quite stiff. However, because this is such a long vine, normally it will grow upwards first, and then you can see that example. Probably can't see it very closely, but because of the stiff nature of the stem, when it first pushed out new growth, it will grow upwards first. But because the internodal space is quite large, it's almost like 10 centimeters difference for each internodal space, and because of that, because of gravity, it has to grow downwards. And if you look into the size of the leaf, I would say it's slightly smaller for the ones more downwards. Let's see. Yeah, I think that's the last set. So actually I have more. Yeah. I think the leaf size potentially grows slightly smaller. Just slightly, not significant. So for medium-sized Hoya, as I have explained, I don't think it impacts so much with the size of the leaf. Then we move on to this side. This is so small. This one over here is Hoya Microstemma. I don't think the leaf should be this small. I think it is because it is in a very high light condition. As I have explained, leaf size impacts more with light intensity compared to how you grow it, whether it's trailing upwards or downwards. It impacts a little bit, but not so significant. For small leaf Hoya, the leaf size impacts significantly with the strength of light. And let me see, yes, this one is the original plant. I got this one as a cutting from Camilla last year, maybe 1 year ago. You can see that the leaf sizes are huge. And let's see, this is a new stem that pushed out. This is alright. The leaf size is obviously smaller, but I like small leaf Hoya, so I wouldn't mind at all. You better be very, very small. So you can see that this one here, it has a very nice hanging down growth pattern as well. Let's see why, if it fits all of the characteristics. So first of all, small leaf Hoya, and the stem is it's very thin. It's not relatively, but it is really thin. A bit stiff. That's why it's not kind of naturally trailing downwards like this, but it actually grows a bit upwards like this towards the light source. And you can see this one, it kind of have a tendency to grow up, but yeah, it's just super, super tiny. And I have a lot of Hoya. I try not to be too long of a video, but let's move on to the left hand side here. This is a very, very pretty hanging basket Hoya. This one here is Hoya Lacunosa Royal Flush. The leaf is very small. The stem is relatively okay, like comparatively it's thin, of course, and also it's very soft. It's spendable, and that's why it grows very nicely as a hanging basket plant. And the internodal space is relatively short. That makes it a fuller basket, and it also branch out very easily. You can see that this one here, I originally have 3 stem in one pot, around 1 to 2 node for each stem, and now it grows all direction. And just to give you a peek on how it looks like as the coloration for the new leaf, it is this kind of maroon deep purple with amazing amount of splashes. It's just incredible. And you also have a quick glance, I guess, on this one. Yeah, I think this one is because of sunburnt. But this one over here is Hoya Minutiflora. This one has very small leaf, and it is a fantastic, again, basket plant. It is because it has really tiny leaves, and also the stem is very soft and also very thin. Let me see if I can get maybe here, get a little bit easier for access. Alright, so you can see that this is Minutiflora. The stem is extremely thin, and also it's very, very flexible, i.e. very soft. And the internodal space is close but not packed, so it looks very bushy and nice as a basket plant, but also neat and tidy. So this is perfect as a hanging basket. Over there is Hoya Sigillatis Atlas River. It has extremely cute and sun-stress leaf, and you can see it's also very small. And the stem is relatively thin and relatively soft, so it also branches out very nicely. You can see that the pot is quite full. And with this being said, it grows very much all direction. It basically grows there, and then it grows there, it grows up there. Very freestyle. This one over there is Hoya Odetteae. This is the example I want to show you as how being a hanging basket plant actually encourage the branch out on the node, which is the closest to the soil substrate. Let me show you this. You can see that node over there have so many branching out coming. It's probably 5 branches from one node. And the main reason, I guess, is because it doesn't have a lot of support for new growth for the hanging down parts over here. The leaf is very thin, probably around 10, maybe 8 centimeters long. It is also very soft. It's a very, very attractive Hoya. I love this Hoya Odetteae, actually more than because this one is a true Tsangii, it is more attractive than the Tsangii, i.e. Burtoniae, that I have. But for this one, it has very beautiful way as a trailing down Hoya. Mainly because the stem is very thin, you barely can see the stem. You just see a bunch of leaf with very regular distance, which makes it aesthetically very pleasing. And also you see that the stem is extremely soft, I would say. This is soft. I think this is the softest that I have shown you in this video. And because of that, it looks fantastic as a hanging down basket plant, but it also wants to support itself for new growth. So you see that the new growth point, as I've shown you there are so many branching out situation going on, and it is just a 1-node cutting. Because I remember it was a 3-node cutting that I got from Camilla, but I thought this one will not make it, because 2 out of 3 chopped up node, they all dried up and died, and this is the only one that made it, and now it has transformed to this beautiful part of this amazing meal spill cabinet. Then we move down here. I would like to show this Yuennanensis. This is also a very good option as a hanging basket plant because of the nature or the size of the leaf. You see that it's very small, but the interesting part is that the ones that I got as a cutting, you can see the largest leaf over there, I got it in that size, and it took some time for it to push out new growth point, but you can see that the new leaf over here, these new leaves are very different from the oldest leaf it has. It almost looks like a different plant. The older leaf is very thick, but the newer leaf is very thin. Together with this ab, if you see that leaf veination, and also it's very, very hairy. And you can also see that the older leaf, this one is before these ones. It is so tiny. I don't know really why. It is so much smaller than the oldest leaf, and also even the new leaf that pushed out is like twice the size. But this one is a very good option as a hanging basket plant if I give it some time. This one I got it as a cutting, so it's not a very large plant, but if you look into the leaf, it's a small size leaf, and also the stem is very thin. Also, it is very soft. You can see that it's almost like a hairy thread-like, and it's super bendable, and that makes the growth pattern to not grow upwards, as you can see. This one is the new stem that pushed out from that node over there. You don't see that go upwards, but instead it naturally goes down because the stem itself is very thin. It can't support a leaf growing upwards, and that's also a very key determination of why this will look very nice naturally as a hanging basket plant. And if I pan to this one over here, this one could also be a very nice hanging basket trailing Hoya. This is Hoya Sigillatis AH01, I believe. This is the super silvery version of Sigillatis. The new leaves comes out very nice color, like a hint of purple if you see the undertone, and it is incredibly silvery. The splashes looks very nicely distributed. The density of the splash is very high, and you can see that the older leaf is over there, and it takes some time, I would say, to fully harden off the leaf, and this leaf is further away from the light source. I guess that's the reason why it's not as splashy, and also it is still kind of soft compared to that one over there. That one there, it's also a new leaf that pushed out from the one leaf cutting. And you see that this one, it's much harder, and because it is right directly beneath the light source, this is so splashy. It's like a full silver leaf but have splashes of non-silvery variation. That's very nice. And also this is much larger leaf size. And get back to whether this one is a good basket plant. It is a good one in my opinion because the stem is very soft. You can see this one is very thin and it's very soft. So now that it's kind of like cluttered together, you can't really see how it hangs downwards, but you can use your imagination. You will know that this will be a nice hanging downwards plant if you have enough space for it to hang down with this very beautiful silvery leaf. And next to it, it is that one over there. It is Hoya VL9. This one, it is super pretty as a hanging plant. If you could see and spot out which stem refers to VL9, yes, it is this one. VL9 has very small leaf, and also the stem is very thin. It's not extremely bendable or soft, but it is on the softer side. And the reason why it's such a beautiful hanging basket plant is because the internode is very regular. The internode is around 3 centimeters for each of the internode. It makes it look very tidy as a hanging basket. And if you look into the growth pattern, it is because the stem is not particularly thick and stiff. It naturally hangs downwards as it grows, and that's the reason why it looks very fantastic. I also have one over here. It's probably a bit hidden. It's a bunch of other leaves. This one over here, oops, is ETS 10. You can see the leaf is very rounded and without any point on the edge. It's just like an oval shape, and the silvery splashes is also quite stable, even though it doesn't have a lot of direct light, because you can see from this angle it's pretty covered by other leaves, but it managed to have pretty nice silver splashes. And because of the leaf is relatively small, you can see it looks nice as a basket plant. This one is only a 6 centimeters inches tiny pot, but you can see how many stem it pushed out and kind of look like a basket plant already. And it has relatively soft stem, not particular soft, but at least it's bendable, and also it's very thin. That's why when it trailed downwards, it's just grows naturally as the growing pattern to grow downwards for this one. Just try to focus. There you go. And with these two, VL9 looks like this, and also ETS 10 looks like this. I want to show you over this, the GPS 735. It is also pretty nice as a hanging basket plant. For me, GPS 7-40 is a prolific grower before winter hits. After winter hits, I don't think it has pushed out any new leaf until around a month ago, because you can see this is the end. Let me see. It's all tangled over around. It doesn't really have a new growth point over there. It's kind of dried up. Yeah, you see that tip over here. It didn't push out any new leaf, but a month ago, it kind of woken up. You see that this is a new vein that has grown, new vine that has grown, and this is the grow tip. And for this one, it's slightly different from VL9 because this has similar leaf shape but more stiff, and the major difference between VL9 and GPS 740 is the stem. The stem of GPS 740 is relatively thicker, and which makes it a bit more stiff. And with that being said, the growth, it's not as naturally hanging downwards, because as you can see, this one, this one VL9, it naturally grows down. But for this here, you can see from behind, it is very stiff. So then it just grows sideways towards the light. And then move downwards over here. I would like to show you this one. This one, I got it as Hoya Lee, but I kind of feel like this one is the true Yuennanensis, because when I look at the picture, and I also spoke with Odetteae, the Yuennanensis that she has looks very similar to this one, because this is less pubescent and it has less vein. It's more shiny on the surface and it just doesn't look the same as the one I showed you as Yuennanensis over here. You see, this one, it's very different from the texture and also the surface. So yeah, let me know in the comment box below if you think this one is actually Yuennanensis. But go back to what I am discussing with you guys. This one, it's a good example of a basket plant. It is because the leaf itself is relatively small. The stem is very thin and also very flexible. You see, you can kind of bend it without any worry or concern that you're going to break it. So this one also branch out quite well. You see that there's only one stem actually, but in the same node it pushed out several new growth point, which makes this looks bushy from the top. I want to show you this contrasty example. This one over here is Longhelix. Longhelix is a new species that I don't know how long it has published, but it's a relatively new Hoya for me. It is similar to the growth pattern of Hoya Bella, even though the leaf is very small. The stem is also very thin, but it's very stiff. Which I meant is the stiffness of the stem allows it to grow upwards as a growing pattern. So this is an example showing you that even though leaf is small, stem is thin, it does not necessarily mean that it will naturally grow downwards. Look at this. It actually grows upwards towards the light source. I believe for this one, because of gravity reason, it will eventually grow downwards, but it has to have a lot of leaf on the stem, and also potentially the light source is not above. So this one, it might look nice as a basket plant, but it will have a more higher tendency to grow upwards. Thank you very much for staying until now. I wish you enjoyed this content and I hope you find this information helpful. Sometime I thought just sharing 10 Hoyas to showcase nice Hoya as a hanging basket plant with mature form, it might not be very relevant to you because maybe you don't find these Hoya in your garden center. And how would you know if you only have this bit of stem cutting? How do you know it will end up looking? I hope these 4 characteristics could give you an idea through deducing the conclusion whether it will be aesthetically pleasing as a hanging Hoya plant when you only have this small stem as a reference point. Of course, you can always Google, of course, you can always look into Instagram posts, but it'll be nice if you can just have a look by yourself and you can determine it by yourself. If you like this type of content and you think this one is helpful for you, don't forget to like this video and share this video with your friends. If you have not subscribed to my channel yet and you don't want to miss out next time when you talk about Hoya or my houseplant, don't forget to hit that subscribe button so you won't miss out. Until next time, I wish everyone is having a great day and I'll see you in the next one. Bye!